Hello. If you want to support us here at The Contemporary Gentleman, you can buy into our Spy series, links below. And depending on when this was recorded, we may or may not have an Instagram and or Patreon. If we do, links are below. Cheers. Hello everyone, James Donaldson here with a video on the Holosun 509T, and I cover both the X1 and the X2, to which I can't tell the difference. Stay tuned. Alright, so jumping into the gentleman's disclosure. All items were gotten through a third party. Now, additionally to that, the third party, I think it's important, acquired the Holosun with the CHPWS plate, and they got them together from CHPWS, so even further removed from Holosun. Now with that, granted that's really the story for only one of them. The other one was acquired privately from a private person, and the third was acquired, I think, through Euro Optic or something like that. So, for whatever that's worth. Additionally, they've all used the CHPWS plate. At the time I bought them, they seem to have been really good. I've heard chatter about them not being the case anymore. I don't know, whatever. This video is not about the plate. So far that I've seen, all the plates have been good. Next, for the first one, which is the one that's taken the brunt of the testing, I installed it by June 30th of 2021. And I believe that's about the time, and it was then first shot on July 12th, 2021. And it is still functional now. If I've had any battery changes, it's been one, which I don't think I've replaced the battery even then. So that's kind of where I'm at with all of it, laying the groundwork. We'll get into the other two and go from there. So meat and potatoes, why an enclosed optic? Because that is a big criteria for me if it's available. Some of the Micro Series SIG just released an enclosed micro red dot. I'm interested in that. Other than that, I don't think there's any others available. So, enclosed. Why? So, I don't have a crystal ball, right? So there's always those people that say, well, you know, even Lucas TRX Arms kind of famously talks about, well, he's never had that issue and he doesn't think it's realistic, all that. If you live in a world where it's possible and it's pretty easy to mitigate, I'm going to try to mitigate it. So I live in a world where I could indeed drop my pistol. It could indeed come into contact somehow otherwise with something. And so the more resilient of a optic I have, the better in my mind. Because especially from those unforeseen circumstances, which I've been in situations where I had an unforeseen circumstance and had something fail because of it, and I thought, damn, what could I have done to avoid this? Because I really need this item now, and it's not available. So, anyway, that's why I'm all about enclosed optics. Now, I do realize there's arguments for cracking, then moisture getting in. I haven't had that problem, and I think that's less likely than stuff getting in front of the emitter. As little as that seems to happen to people, I think it's more likely. Anyway, enough of arguing about what kind of optics and why I like them. So anyway, getting around to it, at the time I acquired this, to my knowledge, it was one of 2 enclosed emitters available. There's a 509T, which we're talking about, and the aim-point acro. And there was a large gap in price, especially getting some of the stuff on sale. Not all 3 were. But anyway, there's still a large gap in price, and so I wanted to give it a try. I follow Sage Dynamics a lot. He's one of the main ones that I kind of take his testing and go off of that. And so, I mean, 10,000 rounds, 20 drop tests, shoulder height on the concrete, the optic survived. Plus, let's talk about the optic. So, yes, it's enclosed. It's obviously durable. Why is it durable? Well, the architecture, literally the geometry of it, being a box, it's just going to hold up better. Now, what makes it even more so is that it's titanium. So this is a tank of a shell for an optic. Wow, that's pretty awesome right there. So, going from there, it does come with a, or at least the first one, I don't think they're still doing this, but it comes with an adapter to adapt an RMR footprint so that this can ride on it. That's pretty cool. It's irrelevant for Glock MOS, so, but I appreciate the thought and them putting it in there. Plus, it's kind of like a good hit at Turgicon, like, we're replacing your shit. Anyway, I think it's interesting. Now, it functions well. Like, it does. The first one especially. The second one, not as well, which we'll get into, and then the third one seemed to function fine as well. So no complaints there, and then the functions on it are good. It's got features we'll talk about. Some of them being 10 daylight settings, 2 night vision settings. I don't know technically if I used the night vision settings. I just turned this down until it wasn't blooming too much in my night vision. I did that before I was able to film night vision, so I don't have footage of shooting this with night vision, but I have done it. Oh no, I might. I guess I'll roll it in if I do. Anyway, the features are as present as you want. So kind of the main notable features is that you can go off solar or intermittent. It also uses this. I think this is what it uses as a sensor. If you have an auto dim or auto brightness adjust, whatever you want to call it, that's a feature. Probably the feature I did use is the adjustable reticle. You can either do a dot, the donut of death, for lack of a better term, or the dot with the donut of death. It's easy to change between them. I always look it back up to be sure, but I think you just hold the minus button down for 3 seconds or something like that, and then it rotates through them. Typically for carry, I just use the dot. It is 1 MOA, usually pretty easy to acquire. But then going from there, for home defense gun and for 10 mil hunting gun, I always have it on the dot with the donut of death, mainly because, not that I wouldn't in a concealed carry environment, but I'm usually actively thinking about a concealed carry environment. But in the middle of the night, and maybe when hunting, and I have to draw it unexpectedly, I just want it to be big and bright so I can find it easy, even though pretty much my alignment and sight acquisition is always the same. There's not really a challenge prepping that, but stacking the deck in my favor. So it's a feature I use now. If it didn't have that feature, it would be okay. I wouldn't really mind. And if you go on their website, it's got a litany of features that it has. I don't know, that something about lens coating and things like that. To a degree, it's irrelevant. One of the other ones is the shake awake. We'll talk about that too, but on paper it looks like a really good thing, and it has definitely preserved battery life on this one, because we are now in 2024 in October, and so it's made it over 3 years with either 1 battery change or none. Again, I really want to say there's been none, but anyway, continuing on. So mounting, I think this and the Acro, and maybe the Steiner, I don't know how the Steiner mounts, but this is superior mounting, if I can talk about mounting for a second, which is another reason I prefer this type of optic. And I'll exclude the enclosed RMR. I don't remember what's called, the RMR. I don't know. So anyway, but let's talk about the physics of it. You have your slide going back and forth. You've got 2 screws holding a plate in. So the screws as they ride the slide, are kind of being worked like that because they have weight attached to them, pulling back and forth. Is it visually happening? No, but the physics are there. So then let's take a more traditional optic and put 2 more screws. So you have 2 sets of screws, and 2 items, the plate and the optic, all moving like that as the slide goes back and forth. Clearly, it can be done, it can work, etc. But if you have 2 screws into a plate on the slide, then you have a cross bolt, which is how the 509T and the Acro mount. The physics change, because now you have a bolt riding with it, and it's not really working the leverage as another set of screws. Yes, you have the other 2 screws there, sure. I guess mill a slide and then you won't. Point is that you don't have more wrenching back and forth. Instead, it is just riding back and forth. And so the optic, in theory, with the physics, might try to do that. But that cross bolt is just clamped it down. So, honestly, just intrinsically with the design, I think the mounting's better. And I think that's why I haven't seen, I kind of looked around a little bit, really didn't see any issues with 509Ts, or Acros for that matter, coming off like other optics have. So I think that's just inherent in the design. I'm not going to carry on any longer, I think you get the idea, but I really like that. Now let's get into the battery tray. You need a special key Holosun gives you with it. You could use a flathead screwdriver. I kind of recommend you keep one around, because similar story with the adjustments, which we'll get to. But battery tray, I don't know, a little tricky to get out. I've read of other people having problems, and the 3 that I have, granted one of them, well, 1.5, really got accelerated use. I haven't had any issues, so I think it's fine. This is one of the optics that came out fighting the RMR, and because you have to remove the RMR, change the battery, kind of a pain in the ass. Whereas this, tray out, swap the battery, tray back in, not a big deal. So I like that part of the design for sure. Now, battery power levels, takes 1632. They say 50,000 hours on setting 6. Cool. I mean, with the Shake Awake, it's just lasting longer, and of course it can draw from the sun. I don't know the details about how that works, but you know, this is pretty bright versus your calculator, like the calculator I grew up with. I don't know. It seems to function fine. It's just using the sun. So I haven't messed with that setting too much. That is adding a bit of complication, which I'll get to with the Shake Awake. But it is a feature nonetheless, and kind of getting back to what I mentioned about the features, they're there when you want to tinker with them, and they're gone when you don't. So once I had this thing set up, it just ran. I didn't have to fiddle with buttons unless I really needed to adjust the brightness, and that was about it, or if I wanted to change a reticle. But there's no extra switches or funky menu, hit this 5 times, and then this is just very simple, very easy to use. Even though I had to pull up a manual, which is easy to find online if I don't have one on me, it's very cut and dry, user-friendly. Next. So the clarity, when I pay attention, it still looks pretty good. Now, I'm not really one to compare it just side by side, look for the perfect image optic to optic. And this is really the same across the board with most optics, a little different with magnified. But basically, consider this. When you're target focused at the range, or especially in a self-defense scenario, you just see the target in the dot. So as long as the glass isn't that terrible, which I would say probably none of them are, you're just going to see the target in the dot. And that's what you should see. That's what you should be focusing on. So I didn't get too into the weeds with worrying about how it looked. It looks good. That's how it looks. Looks good. Maybe great, even, I could say. So not a ton to report there. And really I recommend you focus on the target as well. Reliability, here we go into Shake Awake. So 2 out of 3 were on every time I moved the gun. The only time they weren't on was because usually with my hunting pistol, the 10 mil, I would just turn the optic off. Because of moving the door, all that, even though yeah, it could probably last longer than the battery not decaying, still, there's just no point in having it on. But self-defense gun, concealed carry gun, no problem. Other than when I switched, so I had my Glock 45 as my home defense gun configured just like this, and then this 17 is what I was carrying. I switched them for a variety of reasons, nothing negative, just to try stuff out. And I had them outfitted identical. If you follow me, you're kind of aware of that, because I wanted my gun I use in the middle of the night with half a brain to be identical to what I was carrying and shooting constantly. So, just taking out one more factor of error. So, in doing that, I discovered that the shake awake feature didn't always work. And so the first time it happened, I presented in my gun room and didn't see anything. And I kind of fished around, didn't see anything, got close, hit a button, saw it, no problem. So okay, that's kind of weird, a little scary. It's also why we train with iron sights still, don't forget that. And so it happened a few more times. And then when because I'm also working on acro evaluation, when I switched to an acro for my main squeeze gun, having an acro on it, I just set the 509T on top of the safe, which rocks a little bit when I open it. And so I would come downstairs and look through the optic, see nothing some of the times. Most of the time, I'd see nothing because it hadn't moved. Then when I moved the safe, I would look through it, and on rare occasion, the dial wasn't on, and I had to turn it on. So I'm kind of not interested in shake awake anymore. Now, you can turn it off, and what some people said is that's what they did from the get-go. They didn't even try it in the beginning, and all of a sudden does say 50,000 hours on setting 6, not including shake awake, so fine. But when you put a lot of things in there, you're creating a lot of failure points. I hate that saying, oh, there's more to go wrong with more technology, gadgetry, whatever. The saying gets abused is why I hate it, and it gets used in a lot of application that it has no business in. To a degree, electronically, it's an accurate statement. There is more in there, so you've introduced more failure points. And it's one thing to have some features, and if the feature doesn't work, your item still works. Again, that's a misplaced saying. In this case, you have a feature that dictates if it's on or off, and that's where it's an unacceptable failure point, because if it fails, your optic is not working. It'd be different if I held the button down to change the reticle and it didn't change the reticle. That's an acceptable failure, and that's again where someone's saying, oh, more features, more to go wrong. Okay, but it doesn't really, I can still use the item. Maybe not in the manner I want, but it's usable. However, shake awake kind of scared me. So getting into calibers used and kind of the abuse it took, this took over 1,000 rounds easy. I've gotten better about keeping track of stuff like that lately, but kind of looking back through my ammo purchasing and where I'm at now and all, I know I've been through 1,000 rounds, most of it on that optic within that time period. So somewhere over 1,000 rounds. I purposely put somewhere over 500 rounds of 10 millimeter on one. Now I didn't do it all the same one, arguable that I should have, but that just wasn't how things worked out with life. But I did think, well, it says a lot if it fails just being shot 10 millimeter within 500 rounds. And again, it did not fail. I was kind of wanting it to, because for some reasons I'll get into, I was kind of wanting to find reasons to not like this optic. But after a lot of hunting, I can't not recommend this optic, which we'll get to. But it survived, 9mm and 10mm. I have no interest in using an optic like this on a shotgun or rifle or anything like that. You certainly can. Or a carbine. I don't have any PDWs or anything like that right now, so it's just not viable. But the option is there if you would like to do it. So if I was to be involved in the production of this optic, based on my evaluation, this is what I would like to see. Definitely lose shake awake altogether. Get rid of it. Auto brightness fine. Even the solar thing, I could do without it, especially if it brought cost down a decent margin. Great. But I don't mind that it's there. My big problem is the shake awake. Maybe have the torque written on the side. Seems like a silly thing, but when you go to torque it down, you think, oh shit, what's the torque? I have some optic mounts that have it written on there. It's just handy and nice. And this isn't a complaint. I'm not dogging them for not doing that. Nobody's done it. but it'd be a handy thing for them to have. Now, if you cut some of these items or some of these features and that has a good impact on price, I think this thing would kill the market as just a standalone object. Cutting away all the other BS that comes with being a Chinese product, Holosun, all that, it would just kill. The fact that it's reasonably priced now for what you're getting. It absolutely is. Do factor in you're probably going to get someone else's plate. I don't know that I'm going to recommend CHPS anymore, CHPWS, whatever. I'm going away from that with the Acro, but the plates I have seem fine. So an article came out about Holosun, and it's kind of the elephant in the room. And basically, the CCP is getting money from companies that are there, whether it's a manufacturing facility or the company's based there, whatever, it doesn't matter. CCP is getting some money some point down the line. An article came out discussing the direct correlation, a much faster line, almost direct line sounded like, from your bank account to Holosun to the CCP. A lot of people politically have a problem with that, and I understand that, and I'm kind of in the same boat. It'd be a little different if this was just a holy shit optic that nobody could even touch and it was incredible, but there are other options on the market. And I personally can and would rather pay more money to somebody like Aimpoint to not buy this product. Now Steiner's making some, and there's some other enclosed optics out. SIG is actually manufacturing many of their optics in the United States, which I know there's always caveats. With a manufacturing background, loosely a manufacturing background, but I have a lot of knowledge of manufacturing and countries and stuff. China is very good at manufacturing things, so it's not actually a surprise that this thing isn't a piece of shit. And that's industry-wide. I don't work in the gun industry in my civilian job, but in that industry I work in, China is very good at manufacturing the stuff they're manufacturing. Arguably better than like India or Taiwan or Japan or some of those other places. So, with that, the issue comes around to where the money's going and how directly it's linked. And so, going from there, things made in the US, often some people say made in China, assembled in the US, or made in wherever, assembled in the US, etc. Some people say Aimpoint is made in China and assembled in Sweden. I don't know. One way or another, your money's going somewhere. I'm sorry for this rant, by the way, or tangent or whatever, but I think it's important to discuss. Because some people say, like early on, Holosun I'm not going to buy because it's Chinese. Okay, well, there's a lot of other variables you have to work in there. Is it better? Is it trash anyway? So yes, of course, ignore it. Where is your money going eventually? I guarantee a lot of products you're buying now, some of that money that you're spending is ending up with the Chinese government. Just is. That's the world we live in today. Companies like Surefire work very hard to source even their materials, their raw materials from the US, like their metals they source from the US, and then they're working that metal in their plant in the United States. That's just really hard to do. And that's one of the reasons something like Surefire stuff is more expensive, because you're paying for that. And I don't mind that. So, kind of where I'm at with this is, as an optic, it's good. And really 2 out of 3 isn't terrible. Kind of a failing grade, but I'm sure if I turn the shake awake feature off, that Holosun would be fine. And even if it's not, to my understanding, their customer service program is really good. The reason why I haven't bothered to figure out is because I've already given the optic away, but I don't really have any interest in continuing business with Holosun. I'd rather spend more money elsewhere, hence the Acro. So, with all of that said and done, I hope it made sense. I hope it wasn't too crazy of a rant. But let's get into the close. So all in all, the Holosun 509T is a well-designed optic, and it functions well. I do think it's a deal when it comes to how much money you're spending for what you're getting. And if they cut a few of the features and were able to cut some price, I think it'd be really aggressive and even harder to not purchase. That said, I don't have any plans on purchasing it. Any more of them. I plan on getting rid of what I have in favor of the Acro, and I'm sure someone's going to jump in the comments and tell me that the Acro is made in China. When I find out that that's for sure, okay, we can have that discussion. But I'm not going to move on conjecture, just like I got into Holosun because I didn't want to make decisions based on conjecture. Now that facts are out, now that other information is out, I've kind of made my decision. So at the end of the day, It's America. Do whatever you want, buy whatever you want. Also, Holosun does have workers in the United States of America, so you are supporting those people when you buy and use these products. Where that money goes, that's another story. So, this has been James Donaldson with The Contemporary Gentleman, and until next time, keep your composure.